North in American history. Regions of this country being dealt with in this series, North, South, Midwest, and West, means that when I speak of the North, actually I'm speaking of the Northeast. Going back to colonial times, this would be the northern and the middle colonies, north of what's called the Mason-Dixon line. To go back to origins, we need, of course, to speak about the Native Americans, who were here first. And in different parts of the country, different kinds of climate, different kinds of lay of the land. So the Plains Indians would have a certain lifestyle given that kind of topography and so on, and the West Coast and the South and so on. As far as the Northeast is concerned, we're talking actually along the entire eastern seaboard, woodlands, forests throughout. So to speak of the Indians in the northeastern part of what becomes the United States is to speak of tribes that adjusted to that kind of a life. We can speak of agriculture, but we're also, of course, speaking of hunting. Furs, fur trading, all kinds of things that went on in that traditional Indian tribal societies. One group in particular needs to be mentioned in terms of its future influence on a very important part of American history, and that is the Iroquois. The Iroquois nation was made up of a number of federated tribes in the Northeast, New York State, Canada above that, into a kind of confederation. And one of the contributions that the Iroquois made, along with the French philosopher Montesquieu, was a concept that was utilized, importantly, in the American Constitution. And that is the notion of separation of powers. The notion of checks and balances that can be seen in the creation of a federal government in the U.S. Constitution. That the Iroquois nation, in fact, had a similar set of institutions which were known and copied for that great American document. So we're talking about woodlands. When the Europeans first come over, in the early colonization in that part of the country, we're talking firstly about the Puritans. I'm not going to say much about the Pilgrims. Their story is very familiar, but in fact, in terms of colonial power, the Plymouth colony is of less significance in terms of lasting power than the Puritans of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, which eventually even enveloped the Plymouth colony just to the south of the Boston area. In any case, the Puritans, a crucial part of American history, American religious history, American economic history, and a certain set of values that affect all of us one way or another down to the present day. Coming over because of difficulties, given the religious history going on in England at the time, the early 1600s, to create the famous expression, the city on a hill, to create a perfect Protestant society, away from the European corruption, idealize this virgin land here, and to set up that community there in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. The ideals that they came with, the notion that those who originally came were all felt to be saved by God, of the elect, chosen by God, certainly was a major motivation. The conflicts that would arise in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, the battles between those who tried to adhere to that Protestant ideal of a one-on-one relationship with God versus those whose emphasis was more on the community and the needs of a society there in the dangerous wilderness, as seen, for example, in the debate between Anne Hutchinson and John Winthrop. Winthrop winning that argument, Anne Hutchinson and her followers, who carried the idea of the Protestant ideal, losing out to the practicality, if you will, of the Winthrop position of the need.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?